Hello, good morning. It's Wednesday, July 29th, 2026. It's just after 8 in the morning, and I am watering my food beds. We haven't had any rain in about a month. Not anything substantial. It's it spit at us a couple of weeks ago, and that was it. We were kind of hoping we could get just enough to wet the ground because it's very dusty and dry, and it would keep the dust down. But I've mentioned in the past, I don't know, my grandmother, right, grew up in the Great Depression. She was born in 21, so pretty sure 21 or 4. I think it was 21. She's gone now. She's been dead for 20 years, probably. Going on. I think it was, oh gosh, it has to, at 2012, I think she passed. So, okay, not quite 20 years. 15. Anyway, her and my husband's grandparents both. And I used to pick their brains because I was very curious. It was very dry. It was very dry. And the topsoil blew away. Blew away. My husband's grandma said she remembered her mother would wipe down everything, the kitchen table, the windowsills, a dozen times a day. She couldn't keep it out of the house. That and the cows. I remember the stories about the cattle because I had heard about this. When I was a kid, my grandmother told me this story and it kind of hung around. So when I got older and I went to college and I was sort of studying things and was trying to run it down, my grandma said she remembers the government coming out and killing horses. She said in particular she remembered this great big pit where they were throwing the carcasses into with like a bulldozer. And I remember thinking, what on earth? What kind of hell was this, Yeah, but I was able to fill in all the dots. There was what was it? The Agricultural Adjustment Act. It was like a AAA thing, and it was found to be unconstitutional within like a year or two. And it was practiced all over the U.S. In different places. I believe like cotton fields were plowed over and under. It was because there was a surplus and inflation was so high, nobody had any money, and they were trying to control the pricing in a way. There were piglets in Nebraska. It was like a mass culling, for lack of a better word. But the cows. But then my husband's grandmother stepped in with a point out here, anyway, in the Midwest or in the, I'm in the Great Plains. I know everybody sort of lumps us in with the Midwest, but that's like Iowa and Illinois. That's over there. Like we're kind of different. Anyway, I said the cows, because my husband's grandpa said that was the first and only time he had ever seen his mother cry. That she basically crumpled in a heap at the kitchen table and just bawled when the government came out and killed their cows. They weren't raising cows, they had like a milk cow or a couple, right? So we're talking about subsistence farming at this point. These aren't big ag outfits. So it was a handful, right? And I said, what a waste. You couldn't, what? My husband's grandma, she chimed in and she said, they were starving. They were so thin and skinny. There wasn't any food. There was no vegetation on the ground for them to eat. And she said, and worse than that, They were standing outside and their noses would get caked with mud and they would suffocate. The dust falls on their snotty little wet noses and then it cakes up and it muds over and they can't breathe. And the Dust Bowl was man-made. It was man-made. There may have been a regular drought that set in, like, oh, we have, dry times, that's normal. But it becomes exponentially more damaging when all of the topsoil has been plowed over. All of the trees have been cut down. All of the native grassland has been plowed under in order to grow a monoculture. And at that point, it was wheat that was the big driver. And not, we'll go back, okay. So World War I breaks out in Europe. And at the time, you had, Europe was the breadbasket of the world, or at least those parts of it. In Eastern Europe, like Ukraine or France, or, a lot of open land. And then there was a war, a great big one, and it decimated farmland. You know why poppies are the symbol for, like, veterans on Veterans Day? You see the people remember our fallen or our troops. Pardon. So they hand out, little red poppies. It's because in France, out on the open countryside where the war took place, the warring took place, the ground was full of trees, right? Like, it was a treed wilderness, right? Or perhaps farmland or cropland or whatever, but for the most part. And so from all the shelling and the bombing, it decimated the ground. It tore down all the trees and it churned up the ground. And there were poppy seeds. The thing about poppy seeds is you could throw them deep into the ground and they'll stay there for, infinitum. Like, I don't know what the shelf life is for them. But once the ground was sort of pummeled and churned up and turned over, the poppy seeds were exposed to light. And so once the war stopped, the first things that started growing were all these poppies. And they thought it was a symbol of hope, right? Like all is not lost. So we wear poppies. Where am I going with that? The breadbasket was shelled. And so wheat prices became higher, and wheat became a bit like an oil boom commodity. So you had a lot of investment broker bros in the northeast part of the United States, like Wall Street, who were not farmers themselves at all, but they could own all the stuff because they were investment bros. So they could own the ground, and then farmers were like sharecropping farmers, right? The farmers that were living there could have been there for generations, but perhaps they were leveraged, with the bank, or for whatever reason. The actual people who farmed the ground are the ones who lost the ground, right? So I'm jumping ahead of myself to the Great Depression a bit, so we'll back up. Back to World War I and the end of that, and the breadbasket is gone. So the investment bros are like, but if we just grow a bunch of wheat, this will be a real fast, good money maker. We'll get rich. A bet like investing in oil or the railroads or something like that, right? So they encouraged, and farmers, just regular farmers who did own the ground too, knew this is a good way we could plant wheat because this is in high demand. So they plowed over every last scrap of space to grow wheat. And only wheat. And so now you have a monoculture as well, which makes it susceptible for disease and pests. If you plant a few things together, it's less likely to occur. So plus, when you tear out all the native grasses, the topsoil blows away. And so a drought that settled in that maybe would have just affected, say, a small portion of Oklahoma or Texas was able to spread and be much worse. The wind picks up and it blew all the topsoil off, and it blows into New York City, and, you know. And then, of course, all that speculation collapsed. And then we ended up with the Great Depression, on top of the fact that there isn't any food. So, hey, why do I bring that up, man? Why did I bring all that up? It's because the memories from the Great Depression that they had. And like my grandmother herself, her grandfather was a homesteader. Like, Jesus, a contemporary of Charles Ingalls, which I see is making a comeback, which I find interesting because I think, yeah, anyway. I watched like the first 20 minutes of it. There's a new series on Netflix, you know, and I'm old enough. I grew up watching it as a kid, and I read the books when I was a kid, and my grandma was a great big fan, so, you know, there's that. And those were the years before it got basically co-opted by the Bible Network. So the truth, that show was actually fairly progressive in hindsight. Like, I got on a weird tangent a couple of years ago, my husband and I. For some reason, I had this idea. I said, do you think, you know, in all those Old West movies, whenever there's like a saloon punch out and the guys go fisticuffs, like, do you think it's the same set? Like the saloon backdrop, like they're just rolling it around from one movie set or television set to another. And so I got this wild hair. I said, let's watch all the old ones and see if the set is the same, the saloon. I don't know. We watched Blazing Saddles, and then, you know, I wasn't interested in watching like The Rifleman or Bonanza or anything like that. So I stumbled back onto the Little House on the Prairie and watched it with fresh eyes, not as a kid, right? But as an adult that remembers. I remember what other television was like, right? In the early 80s. I think that, when did that show come out? Like 82, maybe? So I remember that. You know, it's just making comparisons to then and now, and do you know what I'm saying? I wasn't watching it for entertainment's sake. I was more for a historical commentary, I guess. The Waltons. There was a progressive show. A bit. They were a bit more, that was a bit more FDR era. So that's sort of the ethos of that program too, in a way. I mean, the show didn't come out during FDR, but that's the setting of the family is set during, you know, more or less the Great Depression. This is what I was going to say about that, okay? It doesn't have anything to do with the television shows. Is that, so my grandmother and her dad and my husband's grandparents and their parents, because they were farmers and, you know, their parents were homesteaders, they knew how to live on the ground without town, without a city, without Uber, without, you know, they knew how to dig a well by hand, for God's sakes. And so I think about all of us who are about to go through some pretty serious climate hell. We don't know how to do stuff like that. I like to watch all kinds of shit, but there's a historian out of the UK. Well, yeah, she is. I'd give her that. Named Ruth Goodman. She does a lot of sort of reenactment living, as well as the documentary program that the, you know, whoever it is, BBC or Channel 4 or you know, whoever's putting out the documentary. So she would go live at a particular site in a particular way. There are several of them. There is a Tudor farm. No, yeah, was it Tudor farm? So it's what are the farming practices and living practices for people who grew up in like Henry Tudor era or lived then, okay, or during the Tudors. So Elizabeth, you know, the first or Henry the Eighth. So she talked about, you know, bathing and water sources and, you know, the clothing people wore and the food they eat and husbandry, farming, you know, all that. And they've done a castle. There's a medieval castle in France that has been slowly being, for real, rebuilt, but using the same building methods as folks did in the medieval ages, in the Dark Age, medieval period, right? So that's really interesting, cutting stone and laying stone. And, you know, the, what do we call those? The masons, the stone masons, and how they, you know, why windows were real thin and skinny, you know, it's so that an archer can see out the window, but you can't really shoot back at the guy. Just interesting, you know, fun facts. She also did a series called Wartime Farm, and it was her and a couple other dudes, and they set up in a house, you know, and they live like a full farming season, like from fall until next fall or till harvest time, right? And one interesting thing they talked about was like during like World War II, rations were pretty serious. Not only that, but food was hard to come by. And so to feed your animals was an expensive endeavor. You would probably have to get rid of your family dog. You know, most farmers would feed the dogs scrap. Like, you know, I see the commercial for the farmer's dog, the brand. Like, do you know what farmers feed their dogs? Whatever the hell the farmer was eating. And that's what's left over. Like, that's what the dog gets. So just if you are having a hard time feeding your dog and coming up with money for, you know, a 20-pound bag of dog food, it's fine. You can feed them, you know, your leftovers. They'll be fine. Dogs have evolved next to human beings, you know, for the last 10,000 years. So they're used to eating whatever the hell we're eating. Commercial dog food was invented just to, like, well, number one, give you a product to buy. Somebody can sell something to you. But then also it just firms their poop, so it's easier to clean up. So, you know, but otherwise, dogs can eat just about anything. I've had a lot of dogs. They will eat beer cans or tires or laptops or keyboards or glasses or flat irons. Like, I had a dog that chewed up just about every last thing. Anyway, where am I going with that? Wartime Farm. They couldn't have a dog, right? And then the community or a small village would get together and they would say, well, we could all raise one pig together. We have enough table scraps, like not enough for each house to raise a single pig on their own, but if the entire neighborhood gets together, they can all throw their scraps, and then, you know, once the pig was fattened, they could slaughter it. Sharing the spoils in a way. Sorry, I'm off topic. Oh man, no, I'm not. Things got really bad, so bad. I think it was in Germany or around there, in that area where food was so scarce and so hard to come by that they were making bread, but they would fill it with sawdust. I'm not even joking. To bulk it up in a way. There was this whole recipe where what the hell did they call it? Like tree bread or something? Like, that's hungry. That's very hungry. In any case, so my point being is, like, people during the Depression era and, you know, just about there, those folks were a little closer to the ground. Do you know what I mean? Like most people had a milk cow. Even if you lived in town, you'd have a cow that was for milking. My grandmother told me when, my hometown was just getting off its feet, what launching into the stratosphere as a town, which, not really. We're still a pretty small town. The city was only a few blocks, and there was a younger dude who would walk to town from wherever he was, and he would gather people's milk cows, and he would walk them outside of town so they could graze all day. And then, at the end of the day, he'd walk them all back into town and drop people's cows off. A bit like a dog walker, only for your cow. So, yeah, we don't know how to do that, man. We're going to be in trouble. We're going to be in trouble anyway. I'm going to say something might upset some people. Have I said this already? Yeah. The whole cloud seeding thing. Or the they that's controlling the weather. I wish it was that simple. I do. I wish it was that easy. Because we could get our hands around the person who keeps doing it and make them stop. And I think that's why that idea has so much traction. Is because it would give us an easy solution so we wouldn't feel so helpless. But look, I don't deny that, there's a scientific community who's given it a shot, but it's very small and it's very localized. And I don't know, did I mention this thing about the ships in the Atlantic? I think it was the early 2022, 23, somewhere around there, there was a rule that was put in place to require those ships to emit less emissions, less particulates, less pollution into the air. Well, accidentally, they discovered that the particulate matter was doing a bit of positive good, meaning it blankets the atmosphere a bit with particulates and the sun doesn't come down. And so it was staving off a bit of heating. And so once they stop doing it, then it gets warmer because it is warmer, right? Like the particulate matter is just a false. It's like putting up an umbrella in 120 degree heat. Like, yeah, you're gonna find some shade, but as soon as you put that umbrella down, it's gone, It's, ooh, wasp, I love you too. It's nice to see you. Where'd you go? Move on. Are you under there? Yeah, he must have flown off. I don't feel like getting stung, Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, it would be a nice, easy solution, but the truth is we're just burning fossil fuels at a rate and a pace that humankind has never done before. And, I would argue that we're probably burning more today than we were even 4 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It's exponential at this point. It's not stopping. When I was a kid, we didn't even have air conditioning units. I mean, we'd have hot days, and that was brutal, and it sucked. And then, I don't know what point they changed a law that you can't have I'm pretty sure they can't sell the single wide. You can't sell the mobile home without the AC unit. It's too hot. It's dangerous for people. They will get hurt. So, but my point being, it wasn't 105 when I was a kid. Not this many days, man. Not this many days. That's not normal. It's not normal. And when things get this hot, they dry out. And then forest fires spread. Even one that would have been a normal fire. Let's say lightning struck a tree and oh my God, yeah, it doesn't burn down 7 million acres though. They can get a hold on that. They can make it stop. And they do small burns. I'm like, dude, when people say it's bad forest management, globally, everybody's doing it wrong. That's not true. That's not true. Those people, do you know people who work in forestry? I do, and I will tell you that controlled burns happen all the time. That's not why. Things are so dry, they're burning up. Dear God, did you see the footage out of Wisconsin? You know, and that's the biggest bummer is that it's not, we don't, there's no safety from it. There is no safe haven anywhere from what's coming, what's here now. But it will get worse. Like, as bad as this summer is, it will be worse next summer. Because last year was bad, and it's worse this summer. The wildfire smoke, the heat domes, the extreme weather events, they will get worse. They will get stronger. They will get fiercer. Because heat is a lot of energy. It's a lot of energy. And man, it's too bad we couldn't harness the heat. Somebody figured that out. They probably will as soon as they realize they can sell it to us. So, you know. I keep wondering, like, how bad is it going to get before the product they're selling us doesn't work anymore or it fails? Like, you know, petroleum. I don't know. How hot does it get before tires start to melt on the street? When the streets start to buckle. You know, it isn't just fossil fuels. Primarily fossil fuels, though. It's all fossil fuels. I know where to put the blame. But also there's farming practices involved. You know, when you till the ground like that, like the Great Depression or the Dust Bowl. You know, we have paved over every last scrap. I don't think there is an inch of wilderness in the U.S. left. Somebody's been there anyway, already. Like, even if it is, like, there's no unexplored corner of the planet anymore. I don't know. And then wars happen, and of course, that's just going to add to the heat and the devastation and the carbon in the air. It's not slowing down. I wish it was just one dude messing with the weather. I wish. I wish to God. You know, did I mention this? See, I get a lot of gardeners show up in my feed, right? And we're all aware because our plants fail. And there was a guy in the UK sitting in front of his allotment, and he was saying that from his experience, he gave a pretty elementary explanation of the water table. You know, there's a body of water or a river or a stream, and that water evaporates into the clouds, and then when it gets really hot, the clouds are really full, and then the rain drops. Except it doesn't rain in a desert. I don't care how hot it is. There's no water. There's no water. And that desertification spreads. So my point is with the guy with the UK thing. So because he was adamant that somebody's messing with the weather and they're making it so that it won't rain, whoever they are. So are they doing that above my place too? Are they doing that above Canada over the wildfires? Is whoever they are and whatever they're doing to the weather? If it was happening on a global scale, we would see it happen. We would notice. I think we'd pay attention and we'd see it. There would be people out there doing the thing. Because they can't cloud seed, you know, I don't know what the area is, the square, you know, the acreage, but it isn't the size of a continent. And it's a real nice diversion, too. You know what I mean? Like, oil and gas is more than happy to let you think that it must be somebody with space lasers. Because then they don't have to be held accountable for what they're doing, for what they've known they've been doing since the 70s, easily, if not the 50s and 60s. They knew that this was happening. They've taken measures on their own personal infrastructure in order to mitigate the damage they will suffer because of what they're doing. And they, get lobbyists and politicians to tell you all it's a hoax. And since it is so unbelievably overwhelming, like it's really hard for us small, human beings to wrap our minds around the fact that we're doing this. Man, like I said, I wish. People talk about demons, stuff like that. I wish. I think demons would make the world a whole lot more fun, but there's no such thing. Are they manipulating the weather? That's the other thing, dude. It's not a clandestine operation. It's not a psyop. It's not a mystery. It's right in front of us. It's right in front of us. You know why? You can boil an egg or fry an egg on a street, but you can't do it on the lawn, on the grass, because it's not hot enough on the lawn or the grass. But it is hot enough on the pavement or the asphalt. So, I don't know, maybe we should pave everything over with pavement and asphalt. Like, it's just very obvious. It's very simple. It's complicated. But knowing the answer, it's not a mystery. They're doing it right out in the open, and they're getting approved by city council boards to put up data centers and take all the water. Once the water's gone, so is everything else. And it's just not going to replenish. You know why they say they have to find water on a planet in order for life to live? Because it's required for life. Right? We're going to die without it. It's required for all the, I don't know. I was tripping out the other day. Not literally, just metaphorically speaking. There was some ash on the table that was alight. And so I grabbed my pitcher of water and I poured it out because I'm very, I know I'm smoking, but I'm very, very, very cautious about that. The butts go in a bucket full of water. Things are too dry. And I wouldn't anyway. It's disgusting, right? Like I'm conscientious when it comes to that. So anyway, it occurred to me that the water neutralizes the fire, and I just thought that was interesting because it's hydrogen and oxygen that can neutralize the carbon, which fire is a gift from the sun. Like that's a very easy way to put it, but it is, right? Like the plants take up the sun and they store all that carbon in their trunks or their branches or their leaves, and then you put a little friction to it and all that sunshine will light up and start on fire. So it occurred to me that if you don't have the water, all you have is fire and heat. I mean, we probably won't. That's very simplistic, I'm sorry. And if you can follow my little hippie thinking. Sitting out here today, it's hard on my back. And I should probably turn my sprinkler off because I'm watering the tomatoes because we haven't had any rain in a month. We're supposed to. It's going to be 100 today. Might get a little warmer because yesterday it did the same thing. And then there's going to be a cooling off rolling in. So it's only going to be in the 80s tomorrow, but that means more than likely we'll have thunderstorms. Maybe some rain. I don't know. It was on the forecast for this evening. We were supposed to get thunderstorms and rain, but now they've pushed that off and it's tomorrow. And I might wake up tomorrow and we won't have any at all. But, it is true. If it's really, really hot and a cold front rolls in, the weather gets precarious. There's a lot of energy in the atmosphere. And so it kind of blows up, right? My biggest concern would be hail and tornadoes, but, you know, I'd very much like a basement. We leave the house when before the sirens go off. We don't wait. That's too, you don't have enough time. You need to leave before that or find shelter. Please, I'm asking you personally, like if you find yourself in harm's, like the storm trajectory is coming at you, don't mess around with it. These are not the same storm systems we're all familiar with and we grew up with. They're very dangerous. And they're going to get more dangerous. Until then, we're going to keep living, right? I'm going to make some salsa here one of these days. My husband and I jarred up a couple last weekend. I didn't have enough produce of my own. I had some peppers that I needed to do something with. So we ended up buying about a dozen Roma tomatoes and made about eight jars or so. It just hung out together. But I would like to do it again and, you know, post some content, I guess. Just, you know, for other people who've never tried it. It's real easy. Super easy. Cut it up, throw in a pot, and let it cook. Jar it up, can it up, you know, pressure. Well, it's just a water bath, but it's real easy. You can do the whole thing inside of an hour. So we'll do that. Working on my painting. I'm really enjoying that. I'm really, really enjoying that. Like more than I expected to, in a way. So we'll see. I'm not bored with it yet, so I'll keep painting. I have to show it to you. Yeah, maybe later today when you know, it's in on the kitchen table, so. Anyway, stay cool. Stay safe. Don't let the bastards get you down. Hang in there. I don't know what the answer is, man. I mean, you know, we need to stop burning fossil fuels, but even if we did it today, there would still be some heat, you know. It's like pulling that rock out of an oven. It takes a minute to cool down. And so, you know, I have no doubt then the people, the naysayers will be like, see, it's not fossil fuels. It's not cooling down. Yeah. So the evidence would take a minute to show, but I think it would show faster than, like, I think the recovery would happen faster than, or, you know, what recovery can happen. You know, the ice shelves aren't going to refreeze because that took a millennia to do. So it's not like we can stop burning fossil fuels tomorrow and all of a sudden we're going to have great big glaciers reform. It takes a long time. But, you know, during that Roni lockdown years, they did notice, the scientific community did notice that things got better. The air quality got better, the temp got better. Things got a little better. Mother Nature can recover pretty quickly if we give her room to do so. But we have to slow down on the burning of the fossil fuels. We have to. We're gonna cut our lifespans short if we don't. Yeah, as a species. But anyway, I gotta turn my faucet out, my water off. It's been 38 minutes now and the damn thing's been running this whole time. I need to turn it off. So, hang in there. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for listening to me ramble. If you've made it this far, I sure love your guts. You know, you have a good day.